To order. I'm Bill Kinley. I'm the temporary chair for today. I'm vice chair, but given that Tamara is off today, you'll have to put up with me in stumbling through this. So welcome to the May 8th meeting of the Downtown Review Board. I'll ask Alexis to call the roll.
Thank you. Board Member Kinley?
Here.
Board Member Cooper?
Here.
Board Member Mitchell?
Here.
Board Member Perkins?
Here.
Board Member Singleton? Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I will call for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Been moved and supported to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And we have minutes from the April 10th meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. Support.
Been moved and supported. Is there discussion, corrections, changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We'll move on to regular business. I will ask, we have two items on the agenda today, and I'd ask that the presenters for those two items limit their remarks and the entire presentation to something between 30 and 45 minutes, so that we have time to give adequate approval time, renewal time, removal time, whatever we're going to call it, for the second group without getting too close to dinner. So the first item on the agenda is 545 South Main Street. I would ask that whoever's representing 545 to let us know what you think. If you could identify yourself, please.
Good afternoon, Tomasz von Staden of Von Staden Architects, here with the folks from Union Joints, and Kurt, Eric, and a great friend of theirs from Ann Arbor too. So this is our second time here. Got some great feedback and really thoroughly enjoyed the productivity of the last conversation. In the meantime, we've been working and beginning to work on some more of the site plan issues for the site plan submittal, and I think those things are beginning to be represented a little bit more clearly in this presentation. So I'm just going to go through what we have and show it to you. I think that as far as addressing some of the concerns about the downtown design guidelines and the district characteristics, I think that the one thing I would say is the First Street character district description is poetic. It's absolutely beautifully written. I think it's probably the best written and the juiciest of all of the districts. And so when I look at it, it seems to me to open the door for perhaps a bit more romance, a bit more acceptance of history, and I think looks to preserve multiple positions: the railroad, the old river, the industrial area. So it's calling for us to look at those things and reference them and take care of them. And so I think what we're trying to do is take care of and re-inhabit that position that you've established in those district guidelines. So that said, this is a pretty boring page. So as we looked at before, it's a pretty funny site, sitting with the railroad tracks cutting across it. We don't have very much frontage on each corner. The real building that touches a lot line, if you will, touches the railroad tracks and is back of an existing shed. Going up Main Street, the majority of buildings on the east side are really back-facing, so the housing building up the way is a back-facing building, actually has maintenance access coming right off of Main Street. So we felt like it was pretty important to begin to open up to Main Street on the short little frontage that we do have on that side there. These are some existing photos. We've gone through them before. So the site is a mixture of buildings that were built over time, the main building being an old cast-in-place concrete building that in a couple of corners still has some rebar sticking out of it, with this old sort of thinking that you were going to keep on growing the factory, you were going to keep on building the building. We just tested the roof, and the roof has quite a thick slab on it, so there's the possibility too that they had even thought at some point about building on top of that. The site plan is really the same as what we showed you last time. What we've done here now, though, is further developed the courtyard area so that you can understand the way it's occupied. There's two main pedestrian entranceways. So we have one entranceway beyond this existing curb cut here that comes in along a sidewalk and through the property. And then we have another cut, because of how tight it is down here in parking, we have a cut that actually we're putting a opening in the side of the shed there and coming through past some bike storage into the site proper. So again, like trying to interact with what's there, use it as portals, as framing for the site and for the experience, and really thinking that this is a wandering through the site sort of experience for people. This just gives you a sense of the floor plan. So kitchen in the back here, main open dining room in this concrete building, private dining room tucked away here, wood stove, fireplace, gathering area here, some banquettes here. Again, trying to keep away from these old doors that we're going to replace here, being able to fold them open, really see into the space and have it be fully activated both inside and out. This is looking up at the second floor space above the kitchen, which could be used for private events. Has a couple of doors on this side that open out onto the courtyard. Really just large communal eating area. And there's a few steps that go up to the rooftop area. Rooftop has a couple of fire pits, seating for dining, some casual seating up there. So it's really sort of a combination of dining room and living room, if you will. These drawings really haven't changed so much. These are just the building elevations showing the addition of the connector piece up top and the rail where the roof area is. And then some of the stuff that we called out before in terms of the materiality of it. So that's a bit of a repeat. Sections stayed the same. And then we went through and have put the middle courtyard and some more of the work that we've done into these renderings. So this is a rendering when you come down Main Street and you turn that corner. We're bringing signage out to the front here. We sort of liken it, it's got this back truss supporting it, which is kind of a classic old way to make a sign. I think it simultaneously can reference the lumber yard more strongly and also have a nice interaction with the railroad tracks. So that frames that corner and that pedestrian entry there. In the corner here, you can see we're doing a little, we let them be a little bit light for now, but some trees here to provide shade for seating. And then looking through here, it's a mixture of tables, lounge chairs, and then these small, low tents for people to get in and hang out. This is looking back from Madison. So beginning to like put some of the signage into here. So there's a sign on this end wall, which is that beautiful old concrete wall there. We've opened up this shed on the corner here so the actual pedestrian flow comes through that way. Bike parking here. These sheds, we've taken these doors and made them all into a long stackable pieces so they slide off to the side, opening the shed up. So this is a view, just, here you are on the sidewalk. We really kind of love this. It's this view framing through. You're actually seeing the entry on the side of the building. Same time you're seeing the sign here and the activation of the stair coming down. So as far as, we're concerned, like that sort of depth and range of activation is really important, that it's not just a site that's, everything happens within the first foot or two of the sidewalk. Again, seeing the edge of this is the pathway coming through. There's putt-putt golf in here. And really the thinking in that is that those are basically a knockdown little putt-putt golf thing, that there might even be a competition for U of M students or something to do. So trying to have it be a little bit more playful and artistic. If any of you have ever been to Minneapolis, you've seen the Walker does extensive little putt-putt. Again, looking back through, so this would be the edge of turning the corner and walking through the property, seating outside the existing building. This is looking back to the shed along the railroad tracks. Thinking now is that we'll have a series of collection of food trucks that are serving sort of single station items. little bit of seating underneath in there, and then, kind of full activation in the courtyard area. This is looking back across, so this gives a nice sense of how the old lumber yard frames that space, how important it is to sort of have that interaction back and forth across the space too. So that is that stuff. 1 minute and 42 seconds. We did a little walkthrough that we thought was helpful. So this is coming down Main Street and walking through to the other side of the property. So we really followed the path that the pedestrian might have if they're behaving. The grass is a little deep. So that's that one. I'll skip ahead. This one. So there you can see these doors that slide open on that face there. So that's that one, and this one's a little faster. So this is coming up to the west, concrete building here with a sign. Just bringing you through the shed that we're opening up, a couple parking spots, bike parking here. And then turning. And then this cheats a little bit. We're going to go up the egress stair off the side. So that's really pretty much it.
That's great.
Yeah, so,
I neglected to mention, I'll say it to you, but to the next group as well, we're going to try to keep the first presentation part to about 10 minutes. And I've
Yeah.
run a little bit longer, and that's good, because I think this has been helpful for us.
Yeah,
So if you can wrap up what you have to say, and then we'll open this to some discussion.
I'm done.
Okay?
I'm good, yeah.
Thank you. Good
Thank you.
presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, board members?
This kind of harks back to something that Bill brought up at the last meeting, and that has to do with the sheds along the railroad tracks, having the food carts in them. I'm sure is going to generate a fair amount of foot traffic over to that area, and basically the lawn goes right up to it, so I'm worried that that's going to be kind of a maintenance problem. It can be a muddy mess, especially in the
Yeah.
fall.
The lawn is turning into turf. It's pretty impossible. So the thinking now is to take those areas and take the two corners, so the area that has the trees on this one corner, this area when you're coming in, and potentially do a pea stone or do a natural plantings there or the surround there. And then on the other end where the trees are, also do a large enough area there. But then really kind of looking at performance, I mean, I completely agree, looking at performance, looking at the wear and tear, looking at the moving through things, We felt like it's more important to get the trees to give some shade without having tents all over the place than it is to try and pull off grass that's going to be a fight. And especially, I think, with the way those, the overhang works and end of the day, and we all know how the first 18 inches of grass is, so.
I'm actually kind of glad to hear that, because as much as I, on the one hand, don't like the idea of an artificial surface, on the other hand, I like the idea of it being a practical use, and I think the turf will soften versus any other thing that you could use, pavers
Yeah.
or stamped concrete or whatever, so I like it.
I agree. I think that's a good solution for it. Now, just one question, and we'll let everybody else talk. I assume that'll be somehow permeable, so it'll be.
Yeah, there has to be drainage.
has to
in
be
there,
some
yeah.
drainage, so-
And it's a complicated site with the floodplain and the floodway, so we're working on how to deal with the heights and the drainage in there, but absolutely, yeah,
Have
it's
to
got
do
to
that.
drain.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. I think it's a good solution.
Yeah.
Because you're probably reducing impervious area on the site, are you still required to do any underground retention, or?
That's in discussion right now, yeah. So Midwestern, we're working with Midwestern, and they're talking to Drain Commission in Washington, I believe it is, on that
Who's
right now.
doing
so.
site design? Are you doing it in-house? I would assume Midwestern's doing your site engineering?
They're doing site engineering, and they're also doing any assists in terms of setting things up to be taken care of the right way. And then typically, we work with landscape architects to do any specifications within that. So we're sort of combining best efforts.
Thank you.
So just to follow up on the west shed, how are those trailers getting in and out of there? And how often are they doing that?
I can't speak to the how often. They're all, it's a little bit of a struggle for us to find a 3D model and scale them correctly, so they're all pretty small. But I think essentially, the doors are huge. They slide wide open, right? So we've got full 16-foot access or 18 or 20-foot access. Typically, if there's something that doesn't fit, we've done them where we just put them on the little wheel trolleys, slide it in, drop it, take it out if one needs to take it out.
So these have to be mobile so that they don't require a vehicle with a trailer hooked up to the trailer to maneuver them into place?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's no paving at all to accommodate that maneuvering. There's no turf you could get that would tolerate those vehicles on it on any sort of regular basis. So I think really thinking
Yeah.
about that is gonna be an important operational thing if
Yeah,
that's
no,
for real. If they're gonna just sit in there for the whole year,
Yeah.
it's just something to think about, because I'm not sure that it actually works to
Yeah.
get them in and out at the moment.
Leave them? Leave them? Yeah, leave them, yeah. I mean, really, the idea of them is that they're gonna be used for the site. So they're not a kind of component like you would see with some restaurant groups where there's a catering truck that goes around to different sites. It's really not that. They're more of an eclectic mix of pieces that are doing single functions more
By
than a
the
full food truck.
tenant, they're not food trucks coming in by separate vendors who
No,
are
they're all run by
lease
union
space, so they're
joints.
all,
Yeah.
so they're more just like a,
Yeah, like one would serve mac and cheese,
okay,
I mean. it
they're
would-
little mobile
They're just
kitchens.
stations essentially,
got
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about, so I think a lot of the things you've added from a site standpoint are basically furniture, right? I mean, they're things that land and can go away. They don't have a permanence, but they are
Yeah.
creating an environment within that space, and we see a lot of successful outdoor spaces now that are primarily temporary. I think this gets a little bit to what some of the staff comments were around, is some of the more enduring elements that would help, one, create a stronger street edge and a stronger presence along the street. And I'm not sure that the sign is getting us there yet. Viewed from the side, it doesn't have a really strong impact on the street or on the pedestrian experience. You're really seeing the side structure of it.
Yeah,
I guess, and I'm looking at the view that's on our screens right now, which is across the parking lot, and it really just feels sort of like we're seeing into somebody's backyard stuff. And I just wonder about really crafting those edges a little bit more thoughtfully. And that doesn't mean that it has to be really robust, but with a little bit of permanence, that it makes this feel like a space that has purpose and meaning and edges, and that you know when you've entered it and you know when you've exited it. And I think that that would help help the edge of it feel like a meaningful part of Main Street, which is the goal of the guidelines. When you mention the desire to illustrate the romance and the history of the railroad in the industry, we get that from the existing components, but we don't get any more of that richness at the street edge through the things that you're adding as a design team and as a development project. And I think that's, I'm still feeling like that's missing. Like we, you know, it's basically the buildings are doing it. If you took all the other stuff away, you still have the same plan we had last time, which is, you know, it's furniture. So I would still like to see the addition of some treatment at the edge that ideally is expressive of those things that you mentioned in a more enduring way. One other thing I wanted to note is the walkway from the south with the nose ends of cars over, you know, pointing into that. That's something like a 5-foot wide walk. To me, I would never choose that walk. I would walk through the parking lot because it's so constrained. I wonder if you might not consider rotating the parking spaces to be perpendicular to the entry, kind of aligned with the face of the building, to give you a bit of a triangle of space that lets you make that more gracious. The poke through the doorway is kind of cool, and I think if it could just be a little bit more open and gracious, that it would be helpful. This is just very narrow. So if you can imagine where, you know, if you took the parking that's on the east side and flipped it to the west side, it would give you a little more space. Your parking's not very efficient, I guess is what I'm saying. And you could make it more efficient and gain some space and circulation and comfort in doing so. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, but.
Can I ask your advice, since you have great advice? So what do you think would be, I mean, it's a little bit of a conundrum, because on the one hand, I think the richness of being able to see in and pass through is amazing. And I think it's something that I always forget, and I'm reminded by experiences and things that happened. And I often wonder, like, would any of us modern day, like, designers give Central Park back to the people? Would we do Panoramic Hill in Berkeley? Like, I don't know whether those things would come out of us anymore because of like a bit too much rigidity. So I'm always wary of, like, it seems as though you want to see in, but at the same time you want to mark the street. And then when I look around and I think about the street, to me, a lot of it is in danger of being canal-like. It feels like the danger and the reason why you have all of these guidelines in terms of setbacks and everything is to try and avoid the sort of Army Corps engineers, like, sandbag the side and shoot it to somebody else. And so I'm just curious, like, what do you think would be, if we took that upper side of Maine, like, what would you think? I mean, is there something in your head that you think would mark that moment that is a way of thinking about establishing that without blocking it off at the same time?
Well, since you asked.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
I mean, eye level is, you know, 4 feet and above, right?
Yeah.
5 feet
Yeah.
above, really. And I think that if you can, to some extent, mask the clutter of the stuff that's out there and allow views into the building and the upper level of things, the twinkle lights that might be ahead the canopy of the trees, you could do something with a low fencing. Maybe it reflects what you're doing in the window infill patterning, the chevron thing. Maybe you pull some of that out in a low railing with the landscape. So you get a bit of a mystery saying, I wonder what's over there. I'm kind of curious. But it doesn't block it off all the way. And and I was recently up at Holmes Brewery, which is the patio there is fully enclosed. And there's a charm also in walking by this thing and hearing the murmur of voices and wondering what's on the other side. So I would be, you know, I don't think full exposure is necessarily like the best way to say there's something wonderful on the other side of this. So I would say a little screening on the parking, a little bit of sense of threshold would help that, and you could do it with something that was 4 or 5 feet tall.
Okay, great. No, thank you. It's great advice.
And maybe something solid, you know, cast-in-place concrete with pin-mounted flying pasta sign that you have. And I encourage Roy to just screen it a little bit, because there's a lot going on in the green space.
Yeah. Okay.
And I wanted to ask you about toilet rooms. And I've been looking at it. On the first floor of the main building, there's there's a non-gender specific group of 6 or 7
Mhm.
toilet rooms.
Mhm.
Then on the second floor, you have 2 single occupancy, barrier-free toilet rooms.
Yep.
I think I'm seeing. And then I'm seeing another pair that do look gender specific out in the west shed. Am I right?
Yeah, there's,
I didn't see that in the flyby.
yeah, and we've been playing around with, I mean, a little bit of it is driven by how the site gets occupied and what the seat numbers are and kind of really the operating plan. But one discussion that we've had over time about a way of handling additional bathrooms that are needed outside without having people traipse through the inside was to, similar to the, similar to the trucks, the trailers that are serving the food that we bring, that we have a bathroom trailer out there.
Okay.
And
So it's a bathroom trailer
like a,
that you're thinking, I see.
yeah,
I see.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
No, that, I didn't see that, okay. So that's portable,
that would be portable, yep,
okay,
yep.
and self-contained. and-
Self-contained and
okay.
everything, yeah, it's just.
Is that also due to that corner's in the floodplain and you
yeah,
can't
it's
do
a bit-
much with it?
Yeah, all we have to do is hold it down.
Yeah.
So it's not a floating away toilet.
And staying in the west shed, did you consider at all changing the corrugated metal front on the sidewalk, the west side of it? Or
Yeah.
can you also not
Um,
touch that?
I guess
Just seemed, I was wondering if
Yeah.
you thought about visual relief
you're thinking
there.
about this whole side along the tracks. Yeah. So I guess the one thing I would say, the thing that's funny about the furniture and the thing that's funny about the signage is, quite honestly, it's almost a backwards process, right? Like the last thing you would do is say, do the signage and do the furniture. You get your seating counts and then you kind of go through and do your kitchen, you do all this stuff, and those would be the last things you would attend to. And I can't tell you how many times, like, every project we've got in the office right now, the sign's the last thing anybody's doing, right? But in this case, like, it's a kind of important part to show, like, we're leaving space for color to be there, for something to exist. So I guess what I would say is I still think there's moments, like even that cut through on the south side where we make the door there, I think there's moments to add graphics onto that that would be incredibly classic and feel really, really nice against the railroad tracks. But that's just, I would say, still has to be pulled out of the rest of the team a little bit.
And then switching to the north shed, we talked last time, you've got a good south-facing sloping roof there.
Yeah.
Any chance of solar? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, so we asked, so the two things, I mean, in addition to the flood and the floodplain, floodway, the two other things we're working on is with our mechanical engineer, we're looking at that feasibility and where that power can go and what they can do with that. So he's working on that and preparing a little summary for the group. And then the other person that we have on board, because I know there were concerns expressed at the last meeting, and quite honestly, like, we have concerns about it too, are working on the acoustical properties of both that courtyard space and the upper deck area. So there's a great acoustical engineer that's in Michigan that we work with a lot. We've given him the drawings. We're getting some baseline assumptions about the sound, and then, for example, on that second floor where we have the mechanical screen, we're looking at that being built in a way that it's not just, mechanical screen, but it's also absorbing sound off of that roof deck and really trying to see what the sound's gonna do up there. Especially since.
So
we're
there is some
looking at
mechanical equipment on that roof, is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
There's an old
See
dust
that.
collector up there now.
And then on the roof of the main building, I think it'd benefit from some shade.
Yeah.
Somehow, and
Yeah.
get something up there. If you've gone to the roof of Polio, which is right up the hill
Yeah,
from
yeah.
you in
No,
the summer,
well.
every year they build a little more shade in
Yeah.
the project.
Yeah.
It's pretty brutal.
Yeah, it doesn't work to just
Yeah.
do nothing, for sure,
Yeah.
so.
And have you given any thought to how you might mitigate noise disturbance from that rooftop towards the northeast?
Yeah, so right now on the rooftop, this is a screen wall that is currently in wood, and then it wraps around here like this. And then this is this addition coming up. So the thinking is, we're looking at how sound gets around this corner, but this is pretty much in line with the building adjacent, the masonry building across the way that U of M has. So what we're looking at is how can this backdrop, in combination actually with using a paver, we're looking at using a wood paver that also is able to catch some of the sound. So how can this whole piece perform in terms of absorbing that sound, and where is the sound really going? So that seemed like a nice kind of gain and gain, like you screen the mechanical equipment in a nice way. So what if you have to make it 12 inches deep to pocket it and get the sound to be buried in there? So that's thinking up there,
Okay.
yeah.
And let's see, so, the last comment, I remember last month when you were here, the walkthrough that the owner gave us of other
Yeah.
properties they own. They all sort of had a organic approach to it. It looked like components of the site have been added over time, and we would really like to have it more preconceived here. And so I think some of the things Lori talked about, rather
Yeah.
than discovering you need to do this and slap an awning up, and it looked a little eclectic. And that can be really charming, and I think it worked in the other facilities. I'm not sure it's
Yeah.
working here yet,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I think in a way, the way I would think about this, and we maybe talked a little bit more about the architecture last time, so I was trying not to be too redundant, and I think the feedback today in terms of the site's been fantastic, so thank you. But the way I would think about the feeling of it is, first of all, we're bringing you the summer months, and we loaded it up, right, with
Yeah.
experience, and I think if we screen it, it becomes one thing. But the other thing is that I think in this case, like that middle concrete building is so special that really a lot of the experience of it is going to be looking through, right, this herringbone folded glass in a wood frame and a nice soft paint into just a beautiful glow inside. So it's a little bit closer to, coming across the prairie and seeing the glowing house and saying, wow, I finally found somewhere to relax and settle in. There's a fireplace in there. So I think that's a little closer to what it's evoking than that sort of, mashup of components. I think it's crisper and cleaner than that in many ways, so.
I would kind of argue that the contrast between the nice new crisp piece and the older pieces actually heighten the experience of both of them. It lends a certain interest to what looked old and ratty before by contrasting it with something nice and elegant and well detailed. So I like what, maintaining what's left of that, the variation in materials and
Yep,
those
yeah.
things. And I think as long as that comes in the form of what's left as opposed to trying to recreate that with something that's kind of faux industrial, rummagey looking, I think would be my concern. So
Yeah.
as long as it's original, I think leaving it intact with all of its layers of history is
Yeah.
interesting.
And I think the other thing too is that, unfortunately, we have renderings and we have 3D models and we have pictures and, they're great, but it's, everything we love about life is built from straight up experience, and I think that it's, while many of the spaces that have been done, I think could be looked at as being eclectic, when you're in that space, experiencing those things around you, it has a sense of home and place and richness that I think in this day and age of craziness and just living through pictures is really, really important for people. We've sort of seen a return to craft, if you will, in the sense of giving somebody something to occupy their mind in a quiet way, so.
I think some of the comments that I think Lori made about some of the visual break at the edges of the active site, I think that added to that is the practical part of having some site control. Having owned some buildings just south of this, on game day, the outdoor seating and indoor restrooms were taken over pretty much by folks who weren't necessarily customers.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit more of a control issue. You're going to have a very exposed site on two sides. And you may find that practically speaking, that outdoor seating and those restrooms in the portable, you may need a little effort at controlling the ingress and egress.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
may be more of a problem than you might imagine.
Oh, no, I can, yeah, I mean, I grew up with it, and I've seen, I mean, it's basically those however many days a year, even if you just live anywhere and have a front yard, you better be on the watch. So, yeah, and I think that there's probably, I mean, if you look at the way the operations would be, there's probably sort of 12 days, 30 days, 120 days, and then another, 160 days. And so, right, like 12 crazy, 30, who knows what's going to happen, a bunch of stable days in the summer when it's quiet, right? And then comes the winter. So,
I think part of, moving forward with all of the necessary variances that would be required to not meet the standards, I would say would be in thinking about this outdoor space as part of your indoor programmable space and enclosing it and treating it a little bit more as such from an outdoor edge standpoint. And also, I think your points are really great because if I look at both of the parking lots, if I'm in that space, I have headlights shining on me, I'm in there having a drink, the cars pull into park, and there's nothing kind of creating that barrier from when you're inside standpoint and from when you're outside. So I would really recommend looking at at least 3 foot tall something that extended from the west shed north along the edge of the parking lot to create a gateway into the space that allows you that security and creates a stronger edge. I would also suggest doing something similar on the south end of the gathering space, so it really feels like a room that's cultivated and programmed. I know I've already said that, but I guess I just wanted to be explicit that it's not just on the street edge. I think on the parking edges would be something that would be really, I think, an investment well made.
gotcha. So essentially, in some form or manner, from up here across to here, but then you're also thinking inboard here too,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, it's visual and practical. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's aesthetically pleasing, the way Lori describing it, but the
Yeah.
practical matter of the headlights, which I hadn't thought of, but just folks drifting in and out, even
Yeah.
though it is a limited number of days per year, that those are going to be intensely busy days for you.
Yeah.
And you want that to be comfortable.
And that doesn't have to be a massive either. I think
No.
a dense landscape hedge with a really interestingly detailed slat fence, it could be corten, corrugated sheets, and really well detailed, but interesting and fairly spare with landscape behind it. I don't think we have clear guidelines on what that needs to be to say, because that could be a big cost item to throw out there. But I think that it's more about kind of getting those edges established. And so you pointed to the one, I would say on the south end
Yeah.
as well.
So, but would you also then say all the way around?
I actually, on the Madison side, personally think that you only need it on the north end of that lot where it abuts the spaces you're using. I don't
Yeah.
think the street edge on Madison is as important to cultivate as Main Street is, but I would defer to others on that.
Gotcha. Okay.
I have a
That's
question.
really- Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I mean, that's really outside of the considered buffer zone anyways. I mean, you might include that as part of the percentage that you need based on the parking lot or something, right? Okay,
It's more for the space you're creating to work better.
yeah.
I have a question on the first floor. There is an area outside of the bar, sort of in the southeast area of the building, with 2 doors leading out to it. What is that space
These here, or this here?
Back.
that?
Oh.
Yeah.
This is a bit of like an early remnant, but we kept it because we thought it was actually quite effective. But this is a private dining room, and this is just a covered roof area going along this face potentially, and a couple doors. So this could open up. This was the old dust collection area. There's actually old railroad track in there from when they used to drop the dust and wheel it back out. It's a really incredible room that has all the old fire brick in it, and it's just unbelievable 12 by 24 inch, like beautiful shine to it. So the thinking was that you could either access that way or come through this way. So this gives us kind of options seasonally a little bit, and also just the ability for it to open up and breathe.
You're saying those doors are to provide access to that covered area?
This is like the servers could use it as a walkway. bartender could come around that way, people could use it to come through and go to the bathrooms.
It's exterior space or interior?
It's exterior space,
It's exterior.
just
So is that where
covered, just
people
covered.
go to smoke?
What's that?
Is that where people will go to smoke?
Well, that was my concern.
I guess
Not
so.
that I care about people
Yeah.
smoking, but we had some comments at the last meeting from the neighborhood about impact of this site onto their property, and if that's the place where people go to smoke, then
Yeah.
I'd be a little bit concerned. And by the way, I like the idea of using the mechanical space on the roof as a buffer to kind of, to buffer the noise from the people that are on the roof partying and dining. I think that was a good use of that space. So that's my only concern
Yeah.
about that, is people will go there and smoke and it'll blow
Yeah.
over the neighbors. And
That space is really only accessed by people using the private dining, and the private dining maxes out at about 24 people.
Oh,
It's also within the run that's completely adjacent to the building next door. So if one goes around that side now, you actually have to walk through that driveway between the two properties. And then there's a little swath of 8 foot by the length of the building going back for that property, so.
Right.
I think you used at some point along the line the word variances. Do you have an idea, are there variances that you're going to need from what you know of the site and the building?
I think that, well, sure, probably there are a few, yeah. I think that, I mean, I guess it depends on, anything that's new construction is, we're not gonna go beyond the setbacks, right? So if we're building a new little connector piece, we're gonna pull it back so it's conforming. So I wouldn't think that there's that. I know that there's potentially the height issue, right? The minimum building height, massing. But it also is an existing structure. So it seems to me, usually, if you're extending the use of an existing structure, it's pretty hard to make somebody end up getting a variance for using a building that exists. Usually it's, if you wanted to come back, tear it down, and propose a non-conforming building, as a new piece of construction.
But you just
So-
don't know a shopping list of variances right now, is what you're saying. They can come up as they come.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Alexis can speak to what her opinion on them is, but
Okay,
I don't
enough said.
yeah.
Other comments, folks?
disappointed that you gave up the Fort Fingerly name.
I'm glad you brought that up. It's now Block Bar, is that right?
It's a placeholder for the time being, yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Names and signage, those are the, the last thing. The signage comes last because the name comes as you work through things, I think, so. But, yeah, obviously, there's a great and complicated history there, so.
Kurt Cotillo from Union Joints to answer on Tamash's behalf on that question. Block Bar is just the holding company
Of
name.
course, that's fine.
So it won't be consumer facing. It definitely won't be. So we just changed Arbor Bar to Block Bar to avoid any potential confusion. And then we also, we're playing with the name still. And then the other thing I noticed in the latest report of the last minutes is that it's still referred to it as a brewery, and we won't have that component in this undertaking. Thank you.
Great, very complete conversation. Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Well, I would just like to say that I enjoy the oddity of it. It's an interesting piece. It'll be interesting to have in the community. I think you could be surprised by what might be there anytime. I think what it allows for is wonderful. I think it's just making sure there's enough of a kind of a enduringness to it that we are certain that that'll, be pervasive over time, so.
Yeah, and I think it's great. I mean, it's almost like, to me, if I look at it, I mean, I've been involved in writing design guidelines multiple times, and this is one of those moments when you arrive in a district that's saying, like maybe that would be a screen wall or a fence, or like talking about those architectural elements would be something that's added to it. So really, it's great feedback from you guys, because it kind of gives us more insight into the extension of the ways of thinking about the district, so thank you.
I will add just one thing. When we wrote the guidelines for an inward opening space like this, we were really looking at the courtyards in Carytown. And we were saying to each other, let's get more of that.
Yeah.
So you might spend some time there maybe.
Yeah.
maybe you'll find something there that is
Yeah,
useful.
no, I think they're great, yeah.
Okay.
No, we spent, I mean, I've done a few things in there, so.
Well,
yeah,
I think
thanks.
we appreciate your presentation. I think you find we're all supportive of what you're doing, and I think this will be a good project for you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and next up, if you could bring up presentation for, what's the address? 1100 South University.
Alexis, you didn't update the address.
Some places I did and some places I did not.
My name is Sean Avera. I'm with South University South LLC. We're the developer of the project. I have Diane McIntyre with our architect today. This is our second time coming back. We heard a lot of the comments, and primarily as it related to that corner at East U and South University, so we have made some updates to that, as well as we've had a couple conversations with planning and engineering, and have made some tweaks as well that may not be reflected in this plan because they have been made over the last couple days, so. Hand it over to Diane.
That was quick. So I'll go through some of the basics of the building, even though some of it has not changed, just to give a review. Again, as Sean said, we're a 13-story high-rise building. We're in downtown and the D1 zoning district and the South Character Overlay District as well. And there we go. So just to give you an idea of the location, on South University Avenue, the south side of South University Avenue, between East University Avenue and Church Street, where the current PNC and Good Time Charlie's is located on that block right there. I love this view because you can see quite a bit of the development that has happened over the last 5 to 10 years. So our proposed site right on South University at the corner of East University, and then still a mix, eclectic mix of low-rise shopping, but then also showing the newer, high-rise, more contemporary buildings surrounding it. And some site context photos. I know we showed these last time, but just to show the flavor of the site, some existing buildings at the corners of the lots, and then university buildings that surround it, as well as other student housing high-rises. Or restaurants, retail, some lower-rise housing facilities. And then you can see more high-rise housing, as well as some of the more low-rise retail and restaurant facilities that are nearby. So the site plan is pretty much the same in terms of the proposed building outline, but I think one of the main differences between the last time we presented and this time, and we mentioned it briefly at our last presentation, the parking ramp that went down to the below-grade parking was over here off of Church Street, and now it has moved over to East University Avenue. Based on traffic study analysis and further discussions with the city, it was actually determined that this was the more ideal location. And then as that parking ramp moved over, it allowed actually to utilize this space, and I'm going to flip through to the floor plan.
Actually, go back one real quick.
Okay, yeah, hold on.
The other aspect on the site plan as it relates to that section there off of Church Street is that a retail component will be in the first part.
Yeah.
We're looking at behind that, adding about 4 surface spaces to be utilized for building maintenance, building management. And then the curb cuts that is proposed there, we're working with engineering, will probably get be about 33 feet versus 30 feet as
Right.
it is now, so.
Yeah, and I think having the parking entrance here, had its advantages, but it did require a curb cut here at the existing service drive, a curb cut down to the parking, and then Good Time Charlie's has their curb cut as well.
The other thing too to note, which the civil plan doesn't show it, is that on that south side of that component, we are putting in about an approximate 3-foot walk that's between the building and the actual drive-in. Primarily, that drive is only used for trash pickup, which is at the back there at that corner, and then as well as for utilization by Pizza House. They come in, they go underneath the building of the 611 East University project.
Yeah, and this slide also,
Where did you say the 4 parking spaces were?
I'm
There'll
gonna,
be, yeah, go ahead and show Diane.
when I get to the first floor, it'll be much easier to see,
Okay,
but
thank you.
just one brief comment, just to show, trying to keep a connection between East U and Church Street here, either along here or along here. And below-grade parking, and then as we go up to grade level, you can start to see that tenant space over here. And moving the parking garage ramp actually, benefited in terms of getting more use out of the space. And this is where the generator is currently located, where Sean had mentioned. We're looking at adding surface level parking right here. And we'll move the generator into the building.
The bike storage that's currently there will
Yeah.
get moved over behind the parking ramp as well as the secondary bike storage area as well, all on grade.
Yeah. So we still have maintained commercial, retail spaces at the first floor level and residential entry off of South University about mid-block. As we go up, we see the living units, second floor through 12th floor. We focused more on 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units as opposed to 5 and 6 bedroom units. And as we get up past the 12th floor, the top level, level 13, used primarily as amenity spaces, outdoor patio, lounge area spaces, and also trying to bring back that top level of the building to soften the top of the building in a way that, if you were on the street, you may not even see this portion of the building, depending on where you're at. And then the elevations, some changes in elevations, well, some things that stayed the same, let's say. We are maintaining the 2-story street wall, predominantly using brick as our building elements. Also, stone surround for the residential entry. And it's hard to see on the elevation the kind of recesses and things that'll be more evident on the perspectives, but trying to create more variation in cornice height. These used to just come straight across, bringing some elements up and really taking that corner, the northwest corner that had the glass tower coming down and then ending at a recess, has now become a positive element at the street level. This is the south facade.
One thing to comment here that we're going to evaluate as we get further along is we own where Night Steakhouse is downtown. So they're between that and the Potbelly's restaurant, there's that beginning of that alleyway that goes behind Red Hawk. So we had commissioned a mural along that section of the alleyway, so we're gonna look at possibly something here along that to, again, activate the pedestrian experience as they do come through, in essence, a small alleyway, because we know they're gonna cut across, they always do.
Yeah, and another element, I'm not sure if it's gotten onto the elevations yet, is the residential entry on the front is the main residential entry. They can also enter off of the south side as well. And moving on to the west elevation along East University Avenue, again, you see the northwest corner as a positive element, maintaining articulation modules between 32 and 40 feet. And then now the parking garage entry has moved to this location. and the east facade, starting to see the retail element that will come on board and living units above. A quick building section that shows the 150-foot height of the building. The roof itself is down around, 139 feet. So the 150 is really just the top of rooftop mechanical equipment. And if you are over on the 12th floor, you may be down at about 128 feet or so, with a canopy coming up. Some representations of the different brick colors that we're planning on using: dark red, medium, and then you can start to see the street facade as it comes together again. Positive element at the corner. We've kept the vertical recesses that run upside the building. And taking the two-story street wall all the way out to the property line, stepping back 5 feet to what we see as the red brick here. We also have metal panel insets here, about 3-foot inset from the property line. And then again, a 5-foot inset from the property line back to the red brick, and another 3 feet back into the vertical recesses. And then also some variation in a foot or so between these materials, about 3 feet or so between, trying to create some variation in the depth that we see along the building. And we still have established a cornice line across here. We had brought this one up before, and we actually, on the other end, brought one up similar to the west side to try to capture some space up at the 13th floor and bring that out at this corner. Looking at the northeast corner of the building. And then the main residential entry with the stone surround. And taking us to a street level view of the northwest corner. And starting to see some of the articulation elements, the canopies that help bring down to a human scale. And then predominantly glass facades along that street level for the commercial and retail tenants. I think that is the last slide.
Also, too, we were able to have our citizens' participation meeting in preparation for our site planning project here this past Monday. We had 4 individuals attend. Primarily, they liked the design, they liked the look of the building, the architectural aspects of it. The other questions they had as it related to how we were doing the affordable housing premium, how parking and egress worked. But overall, they did like the overall architectural aspects and the look of the building. So I wanted to pass that along as well. Any
Great,
questions?
thank you. I'll open the floor. Maybe Mr. Mitchell would like to comment first.
Oh, okay. Well, and I was going to comment on this view you have on the screen right now. I noticed in the report that staff did, that Alexis wrote, she had urged that you vary the height of the street wall a little bit. And I know you did that with the rear wall on the, say this is the north elevation towards the east. But I was looking at this limestone 2-story piece, which is the main entrance for the residents. Maybe just kicking that up to break the street wall just up to the guardrail height so you don't, and then eliminate the guardrails. If you got another 3.5 feet, there'd just be a variance there that would speak to that being the entry along with the
Right
use
there
of
at that main
limestone.
entry, kick that portion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just to break that's such a
We have a small.
a strong line, and in the street
Oh, that
walls,
portion.
See that?
Okay.
you know, and elsewhere in the city, bounce around a little bit from storefront to
Okay.
storefront, so.
So would your
Just-
thoughts be that entry and then maybe the corner doing something along that line as well, since
Well-
those are kind of the key
I-
aspects?
So, you know, I think Bill called on me because I was the one who said, that barrel vault coming off the diag just frames this northwest corner. And it's an opportunity to do something, and you've changed it, and you're looking at it. I'm not sure that the change in the detailing makes it that special event that we were hoping for last time, because the detailing on either side of it is so nicely done. There's a lot going on the pedestrian level to add interest in, and then switching to the curtain wall system with, I don't know what those horizontal spandrel pieces are, and they appear up above too, but so I know you wrestled with this, and you're just trying to probably make us happy. And I also know you probably don't have a tenant here, and so this could all change when the tenant comes and you submit to suit their needs. But what is your thinking? Did you look at any other options there?
We looked at a few. We looked at 4 or 5 or 6, I think.
This is Dave Nims, he's the designer.
With Hobbs and Black. Yeah, we looked at a few. We looked at raising the cornice height, 1 story, 2 stories. We looked at columns at the corner, just to give you a little more substance. And ultimately, with various forces, a lot of those being the certain aesthetics of people involved in the decision-making process, they preferred coming back with the cleaner street line and just a more exposed glazing corner.
Yeah.
So we didn't include the rest of those studies because this was their preferred option, but we did probably over a course of a month review various other alternatives to what this could be.
No, I respect that, because there's an unknown player here, your tenant, and I assume, Sean, you were trying to keep it as clean and open a palette as you could.
That was primarily
for
the
them.
other individuals within the ownership team. I'm a construction engineer, so
Okay.
design is
Okay.
not my
Sorry.
forte.
Yeah.
I'm like, just show me what you want, I'll build it, so.
Yeah. Okay.
But that was the primary desire, was to try to keep a crisp, clean look to the building.
Yeah. Okay.
I wasn't at the last meeting when this was presented, and so I'm doing a little catch-up. But the first 2 things that popped out before anybody made any comments was that corner and the entry to the residential portion of the building. It seems to me that I'm concerned about the entry to the residential portion because it's kind of oversized. It really, is equal to the other retail components on the street, when in fact it's just a very small door and hallway to the lobby. I realize that the residential is a signature part of the building, but we've seen a lot of other projects where the entry is not the main focus of the entire facade. It's the retail portion, and the residential entry is kind of
Yeah.
separated or differentiated between the
To address that question, so when we did north, the residential entrance is a primary feature of the building. So as you can tell, that was Vic Village North now, this is Vic Village South, so we're trying to carry some of those themes through as well. So having that residential entrance be a prominent component of the building carries through with how we treated the north project as well. So it maintains that feel through the projects.
It kind of overwhelms the potential for tenant C and tenant D to have their entries more visible. It really, for instance, the walls from your vestibule will hit in the glazing somewhere. And so when we look at that front elevation, all the glass that's within the rectangle framed by the stone is just a very small portion that is actually related to the entry of the building. And anyway, that's one of my concerns. And the other is obviously the corner. I don't think the corner is particularly successful. And everybody's concerned because as you go through the diag, that's your main focus. I think just removing a column, which may have been there in the last submission, isn't necessarily the answer. I don't know if you looked at cutting that corner on diagonal, putting the entry on the diagonal, moving the columns back, or.
So
not-
I think the challenging part is, we heard from the last time, you didn't like it set back, so we brought it forward. So that, I mean, it's the challenging aspect. That corner is a challenge, I think, is gonna be no matter what, to find something that is unique and works for it, and fits in with the whole entire building, so.
I'm not saying set it back, I'm just saying, you could cut a corner that's 8 feet, an 8-foot slice and put your door in that.
It makes it a little bit more challenging, though, also from a retail tenant's perspective, to have a cut right there as well. And having the squareness of that as well makes it a lot more opportunities for them, for their entrance and how they bring in.
I agree, and I just think that this is not particularly
We're
successful.
not there yet. I was wondering, looking at the floor plans, is there a way to make that actually a 2-story tenant space, carving part of that giant 6-unit space out? Maybe you're losing some residential space on the next floor above, but if that was glass all the way up, it's the only piece that doesn't have the horizontal separation between the first and second floor. You have a chandelier or some moment in that retail corner space that then makes it special. It's just something to think about, whether or not that's an opportunity. Just think about the second, what you do is one moment where you have a 2-story space that could be
So a lot of that is financially driven too. And as I think Mr. Perkins can attest to, the construction costs have gotten outrageous. The land costs are outrageous, the city fees are outrageous. So I understand and I can agree with that, but I don't think, and it's also challenging to find a 2-story tenant. We've seen that throughout Ann Arbor.
It wouldn't be actually a 2-story tenant, it'd be a 2-story space for a 1-story tenant. But just that you would have, and it would just be the limits of your glass, you can carve in on either side of it. Might be something worth looking at, just
Okay.
throwing it out there as a way that would make that, by scaling it up and having that glassy piece be more dramatic in scale, you might get some of that impact. One other thing on the residential entrance that I wonder if isn't something you could consider is not just, changing the height of it, but actually potentially pushing just the vestibule piece of it back, so your tenant spaces now have corners that wrap toward that vestibule space. So it becomes more prominent because it's recessed, actually, because it's an exception to the rule, as opposed to coming forward and just changing the materials. That inset would kind of lead you there, but then the prominence would be in the retail on either side of it. It's not a simple move based on the plan, but it might be something that could work to actually get those 2 tenants to have interesting little kind of corner edges that looked into that entrance space. I have another, I think we talked about this the last time too. I'm still really struggling with the warmer colored brick. It feels very applied. It feels like it's just kind of pasted onto the front of the facade on the upper levels. And I personally would prefer it was just gone and it was simpler. It feels like there's a lot of moves happening, and I'm not sure that I know they're trying to break down the scale of the building, but to me, they feel just very superficial and not very well integrated into the massing of the building. And even a subtler approach where the color contrast wasn't so much, but maybe they moved to a metal panel or something so that that's more close to the color of the brick. To me, and I think I used the same illusion, it's still doing it to me. The Meyer, where they have the barn and the store and the market and it feels like a faux skyline and a icon or something. It doesn't feel like an authentic change in scale. So I would rather see it cleaned up and simplified than to have that kind of really thin, slapped on approach.
Alexis, is metal panel allowed on the facades? I didn't think it was allowed, but I could be wrong.
And maybe it's just to actually go to a brick that's less in contrast with the one that's behind it.
Well, you always have that challenge of, you gotta break the building up, you gotta do the massing, you gotta maintain the character overlay. So I agree with you.
Is that piece required, Alexis, based on the code, the requirement? And maybe I'm the only one who feels that way.
The code says, following materials are permitted on facades visible from primary or secondary streets: glass, brick, cut stone, cast stone, or high-quality finished metal such as architectural grade cast or machined steel.
Okay.
And then the articulation of it, the scaling of it, is that required? required? If you were to just make all of that, not, and I don't know that anyone else would want that, but if the brown brick and the metal panel around the windows went all the way down, would that be allowed, or is there something in the requirements that's saying you need further articulation and another layer of,
In the South University Character District, you're required to have a 45-foot building module, but but there is no then prescription for how to express the module.
okay.
And there is no requirement for any vertical modulation, but we
Above the
do
street
require design details to break down massing. So there's not a dimensional standard, but there is a aesthetic
This is aiming
standard.
toward that goal, okay. I don't know if anyone else has any feelings about that.
So you're talking all the light brown, the tan type brick, right?
Yeah, if you
Okay.
pull up the elevation, for example, the north elevation, it's, and when you see it in elevation, it has more richness than when you see it in perspective and realize how thin it is.
Yeah, we worked hard to try and get at least that 3-foot setback on those pieces, so I had some substance, so it didn't feel just like a material skin. But again, and that was through a lot of floor plan changes and FAR-driven decisions about where we needed to be with the building. And I think it was, the 3 feet, the 3.5 feet that we have setback from the face of the orange brick, that it returns to where those vertical glazing and metal panels was at least, some kind of a win, especially when you look around at a lot of the developments going on in the city, and it's flat as flat can be.
It's 3 feet?
Yeah.
I'm looking at.
From the glass to the face of the orange brick is about 3 feet of a recess.
I
Do
think
the
go
floor
to the
plans,
go to
Diane?
the floor plans, it'll show the breaks in.
The recess from the dark brick up above it to the orange brick is shallow, right?
Yeah,
It's
This
18
is the
inches.
shallow.
That's
So it's
the
about
one.
half of the thickness.
This is 3 feet between these two.
Do that again, Diane, where is it?
Between the, I call it the red brick,
Uh-huh,
and these are the vertical recessed metal panels
okay.
that run up. That's 3 feet between the metal panel and the red brick.
Okay, but if you move to the right, all the way to the right,
Yeah,
where the red brick meets the brown brick, that's
right there.
only,
that's about a foot.
Yeah, because that's a brown brick is in plain what's above it.
and that's what you see from the corner, I think, when you look at that corner view. Sounds like I'm the only one that's bothering.
I think that we've seen this in practically every high-rise that we've reviewed, and we would always like to see more relief, and I think we're just not gonna be successful at getting it.
I do think this is more than we usually see, though.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the effort to get as much volume up there as you can get.
I like the building. I agree with Dick's comment about the potential to maybe raise the residential parapet to eliminate the railing and pick up some extra height there. I think that could work well. I'm really, though, still disappointed in the corner. And I don't want to dictate, or at least I don't want our board to dictate, set it back, or make it flush, or make it glass, or make it something. It's like somebody said once about pornography, I can't define it for you, but I know what it is when I see it. And I know that this isn't the look that I want for the corner of the building, so, and I don't want to dictate to you guys how to accomplish it. You said you did a bunch of studies, and I think that's great. I'd be interested in seeing them. Otherwise, I think it's a good building.
I agree with all the comments about the corner, and I was going to say, paraphrase essentially what Jeff said. We'll know what we like when we see it. This is not a distasteful design, but it's not memorable. And I would assume that the owners have looked at this and said, we don't want to take away from the primary entrance. This is primarily a residential building that happens to have some commercial on the first floor. And I recognize the value of the land and the building and the costs and everything else, but you want something to be really as a standout success on that corner. That's one of the most high foot traffic corners in the state of Michigan. We owned a building near there, in fact, in the other corner, many years ago, and foot traffic was the second highest in the state at that time. It may be highest at this point. And it would be nice to say, meet me at a building near the intersection of East U and South U that's 3 colors of brick. Now, how many buildings could that possibly be? The tall building that's 3 colors of brick. Well, I could name 3 or 4 or 5. But if you said, meet me at the corner and where the thus and so is, whatever that thus and so
The clock.
is. What's that?
The clock.
That's your call.
I wasn't going to say it.
Started.
I stayed away from that just
Bill wants his
until,
clock.
it couldn't go any further with it. But something that makes it memorable. It could be a thing, it could be the design, but something that makes it a focal point. That's, I think, what we're trying to get at,
Well, and
rather
I-
than saying
I think
exactly what it
and
is.
we can go back and look a little bit more at that too. I have some thoughts in my
I can
head.
get a little more specific. When you characterized, we told you last time that we didn't want it opened at the base. That wasn't, you must have misunderstood us. I think what the issue is I'm looking at the drawing from February. Along South U, there are 3 bays of glass facing north. And along East U, there are 2 bays of glass facing west. And so in the February submittal, you went back 2 bays on South U and created a symmetrical piece there. That left you, this is hard to visualize without a drawing, that left you 1 bay of glass along South U, and the way that got treated was awkward. And there was something that was appealing about the freestanding column and being able to cut through that corner, but how the backdrop as you walk further east was resolved was what caught my eye in February. So, and I agree with everyone else that this, it's still just a missed opportunity, and you're the designers, and I know you can give it some more thought. I hope you do. But it would be great to walk through that tunnel from the Diag and see it frame something that becomes a real feature.
And we see a lot of corners, and we don't demand so much out of all of the corners. But in the city of Ann Arbor, this is one of the most memorable places. And
We just
so
have to be that one.
you have it on your shoulders
Sorry.
to do something that's worthwhile.
Yeah, I think we can go back and take a look at it. I think we gotta look at how that unit and that works there, as well as some other common aspects that are in the building, that we might be able to see what we can do, so.
Thanks.
Thank
Sean,
you.
your company is doing some really nice buildings in town, and you profess to be just the construction guy, but I gotta believe you've got a little bit more pull than that in your company. So
No,
just
I do. I'm one of the partners as well,
Take back
so.
what we're saying and see if they can get behind doing something different.
Yeah, no, and I have some things that are rolling in my head. I gotta run by them because they know the design aspects way better than I do. But I have some ideas based off of Lori's comments as well, that I think we can try to look at that I think will help make that a better building as well, so.
I think something that's memorable would add to the success of the building, and that would be good for you, and it'd be good for the community.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're trying to say.
Okay.
Make it a meeting place.
Mhm.
I have one other comment about the east-west kind of pedestrian alley connection. I think that's wonderful that you're incorporating that and thinking about including art in that space. You're saying the generator is basically moving in the building, so now that'll be open. Is that what you said?
Well, so the generator, where the generator's at, we're gonna have 4 surface spaces right there. But then along both sides, we have, like on the north side of Tenant E, there is a 3-foot walk, I think that's 3 feet?
Yeah, kind of a.
Yeah, it's about 3 foot, and then as
Driveway.
well, again, on the south side, along that, there'll be a 3-foot walk as well.
But it's pavement otherwise. So
Correct,
Not
yeah.
a truck or something in there, it's passable.
Yes, yeah. There's, people come all the time because there usually is not a lot of vehicles in there because primarily Pizza House comes in and pulls underneath the 611 building. And then, other than trash pickup in the morning, really, there's no other, or an occasional delivery here and there. It is passable.
I would love for you to consider not having those four parking spaces back there and cultivating that as a leasable tenant space for an outdoor dining, interesting opportunity. Ann Arbor really, I mean, we have Main Street, but we really have fairly limited, interesting outdoor dining opportunities. Our sidewalks are fairly narrow through most of downtown, and that could be a really weird and interesting little spot if you had art and you had lighting and you cultivated it. We're seeing it all over Detroit. The alleys are becoming really vibrant spaces, and you're juggling them with the trash and all the
So
other
that area back
garbage.
there is primarily all trash as well.
All the way back deep in there?
Yeah, that whole area, trash is all along there, and that's where it gets stored
Okay.
For trash pickup and everything. Part of the reason too for the 4 parking spots is obviously, we're gonna be doing this showed 3 levels, but we're only gonna be do 2 levels of parking. So there is gonna be some aspects with the DDA of paying in lieu, and so that helps us with that
Okay.
calculation as well. And that primary back aspect there is primarily service in nature too as well, so. And there's building above it and everything else. I understand your comment, but I think
Well, and the parking spaces don't preclude down the line there being other accommodations that allow that to happen versus the generator building,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge there is you have all the utilities back there, that main transformer, it's not a desirable area back there right now.
Yeah, well, I've seen it happen and worse. And
Yeah,
it just takes a
that's
lot
true.
of interest in it by the tenant standpoint, which isn't you, so that's fine, thank you.
Any other comments? Thanks for your presentation. Okay, Alexis, do we have any communications from the Planning Commission?
I do. I have 3 things to mention. One, I'm looking for a little feedback as well. The first is about an idea from the Public Art Commission and City Council. Trying to paraphrase, but some city council members in conversation with some Public Art Commission members have expressed a desire to inform private developers of the potential for public art on their projects during our private development review process. And given that the DRB deals with design, space, and other aesthetic elements, it has been suggested that the Public Art Commission could appoint one of its members as a non-voting liaison to the DRB to provide a perspective as to how public art may be incorporated into projects that come before the DRB. It would require an ordinance change that the council members would need to introduce. The Public Art Commission has not formally voted on this, but they have discussed. And I mentioned this idea for you. I know this is coming out of the blue for you, but any thoughts or preliminary feedback you'd like to take, I can take back to the administration about your thoughts on it would be a 8th member, a non-voting, but the discussion member that is a liaison from the Public Art Commission.
Any thoughts on that?
I don't like it.
There's an honest person.
The city has been stymied in their attempt to place public art around town by people that are concerned about tax monies being spent on such things, and I really don't think it's appropriate to push it off on the developers to get them to do it and pay for it as part of their development. So I'm not against art, I'm just against the idea of forcing developers into providing it.
But if the city decided that that was the program they're going to pursue, would you mind having a person join us to review that? I think that's what's being asked, isn't it, Alexis?
Well, first of all, the answer to your question is no, I wouldn't object. But to say that it is a non-voting member, we don't vote in the first place. So if it's adding a component to the design review board, if that's the direction that council wants to take, I'm okay with putting somebody on board.
So just so that I understand, the goal would be to help identify opportunities for including public art within development projects? Or what would be, what's the insight they want to provide?
I don't have much more information than that, other than what they had said. Inform private developers of the potential for public art in their projects. And maybe this is still an evolving concept. I can imagine that it's, whether it just be carving space for it, whether it is actually providing the art. I believe it's all in the very early, the tentative stages, and I'm not sure where anybody thinks it might go, but they are exploring. So if you have thoughts about what role some person could be, or what role they should not take, I'll take it all back.
I think another alternative might be for them to provide us guidance of what they'd like to see as those opportunities, and we can start to look for those and share those, as opposed to adding a member. I think a lot of times we're hearing that those opportunities are being considered already in the process, particularly wall art, as opposed to other sculpture. But I think that's, I'm not clear on what the objective would be, other than that we wouldn't be able to provide with some guidance that, that could just be in support of the design guidelines.
I agree with that. I think that we could become a little more educated and be able to point out opportunities if we were made aware of what the potential is.
That could be interpreted a number of ways, and I think we need some more guidance on what they have in mind. If we're a matter of urging or prompting developers to take on the role of providing the public art, that might be outside our role as design reviewers. We might provide developers with the opportunity, I'm thinking off the top of my head, of the opportunity to interact with the Arts Commission, whatever it's now called, for looking for opportunities, but we already have a limited time for everyone on this board to express their opinion, and have one more opinion come in with a different dimension might stretch the conversations out pretty dramatically.
I agree.
Would they want to come in and brief us on their intention? Would that be helpful at one of our meetings that might have a later agenda?
I think, yes. I think that, as I said, I'm not sure. I was just asked to gather some feedback. Maybe with this feedback, it goes no further. Or maybe with this feedback, a larger conversation is started.
Sure. I think you've heard our response, so thank you for bringing that up. Anything else?
A few more in the housekeeping nature. On Monday's city council meeting, Gary Cooper, board member Cooper, was nominated for reappointment, and a new member was nominated, name of Corey Buckwalter, to fill the urban planner position. Now, the mayor put forth these names to be nominated, and then they will be confirmed by council in 2 weeks on their May 21st meeting. So it is not official, but I wanted to let you know that we have a nomination for our open seat. And then the very final piece, and I'll keep it super brief, but in keeping the board up to date, working backwards, recent projects, the design plan for 616 East Washington, that was a very tall 19-story building. That has been submitted and is under review by the planning, by the review team. It has not yet gone to planning commission. Well, I have no date scheduled yet. The standard Ann Arbor, that was, we know it as 425 South Main Street, DT office building. That is also still under review. It has not yet been scheduled for a planning commission meeting. The Ann Ashley parking structure, the additional levels, is going to planning commission on May 21st, at the end of this month. And on Monday, city council approved the 309 North Ashley Street project. That was a smaller 4-story L-shaped building,
Yeah.
Miller and Ashley.
What about that project on North Main that
It's
has
still
been
sitting
here
a
twice?
vacant lot.
It's a vacant site.
321 North Main, Elroy's Place.
Yes.
Approved, all done, approved. They've submitted for permits, which have not been issued yet, and I think they are still doing costing and engineering and
Okay.
lining up ducks in a row, but it appears to be moving forward at a slow pace.
Thank you.
Did Paul Fontaine not reapply for his seat?
His term expired, and he did not reapply. There was a rumor that that he wouldn't have been nominated, but I can't confirm that.
Question about the Ann Ashley structure. We reviewed that once or twice.
Yes, twice.
Was there any final change? I'm not sure we saw the final version.
I can include at least a handout in the packet for
Just like
next
to see what
month.
it looks like.
I honestly don't know. It was assigned to a different planner, and I didn't follow the very final
Okay.
design. But good question. I'll include a rendering, at least in the packet for FYI.
The
Be helpful.
veil did not survive, I assume.
It's a good question. I
Yeah,
don't
okay.
know.
All right.
I noticed when I came in that the project on Washington behind the Michigan Theater,
Yes.
there's a full set of contract documents down on the review table in the lobby. So it's obviously in, and if anybody wants to see it, the sketch on the front still looks the same, so.
Anything else?
Those are my 3 updates.
Okay, then we have a time for public comment, and we'll allow 3 minutes per speaker. No sign-up necessary. Please identify yourself and tell us what's on your mind.
Not quite sure, but do you hear me with this microphone?
You
Yes.
bet.
Thank you. My name is Ethel Potts, and you had microphones today. One of you used them. Thank you very much, ma'am. None of the rest could be heard. I was talking about your first project on South Main. This is in a character overlay area, like many of the new downtown projects are. I do not notice that you mentioned this ever. And on any of the Southview projects, any of the projects, because there's a strong discrepancy quite often between the D1 zoning and the character area that's described. In this case in particular, this was the most minimal site plan I think I have ever seen, not 1 inch beyond the owned property. The streets are not named. The railroad isn't shown. The existing curb cuts are not shown. No comment about the fact that it's a very complicated area with many kinds of businesses and kinds of buildings right around. They're very complicated. But I think the site plan could have shown some of that, and in your discussion, I would like to have heard some recognition that this is a particular part of Ann Arbor. It has very distinct characteristics which are not very much being recognized. I think this could turn out, this is a difficult piece of land. I think it could turn out to be a good project, but not from the amount we know now so far. So far, it's not good enough. Your second project on Southview, here we go again. You know, there's a character overlay district here, which talks about the narrow lots, you know, the small businesses, the backing up to residential. Any of that show up in your discussion? No, not at all. The character area overlay is not working, and I would like to think you would tell council that you not put out a report that doesn't mention the other aspects of the zoning, which is the character overlay. You should mention that, and you might even want to mention, I think frankly, council should be amending these overlay areas, because you are handicapped. You cannot make use of them if they conflict with the underlying zoning. Why do you put up with that? Why don't you complain? Why don't you make suggestions as to how that could be improved? In the Southview area, I wrote, you have, I'm sure you all have it, a list of the characteristics of that area that are being totally disregarded. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll endeavor to use the microphone here, so give me a second. Hello, my name's Dennis Burke. I live at 528 South 4th Avenue, and I've put a significant amount of my personal income into my property with multiple design reviews and zoning redesigns and requirements as I've developed it over the years. And I'm extremely distressed about the tone and nature of your discussion with the Union Joints staff. This is a destination bar restaurant that relies on a significant portion of its revenue and business plan for outdoor seating and outdoor live entertainment. This is a residential area. There have been millions and millions of dollars that you have approved in projects less than a block away, high-end residential. Our previous governor lives a half a block away in his multi-million-dollar townhouse from this place. And this restaurant, bar destination restaurant, will have lots and lots of noise. There was a previous occupant of the old April Dairy, which is next door, which was the Leopold Brothers Brewery. And it was an ongoing battle between the Old West Side residents and the residents on my street as to the noise levels at night. Frequently on the weekends, the police were called after 9 p.m. to tell them to quiet down. And I have no doubt, should this project go forward, that it will be the exact same case. There is no amount of noise buffering that can attenuate alcohol-imbibed crowds and live entertainment in that venue. How many of you have actually taken the time to go walk this area, take 10 minutes and go walk through these buildings? They are the lowest cost possible denominator structures built in that area of town. They are cheaply built, they are cheaply engineered, they have been allowed to decay. There was no central heat in the wonderful concrete building that they talk about. This is just the wrong project in the wrong place. That district, this overlay district, is becoming one of the most sought after, high-end rental districts in the entire Midwest. There are a multitude of projects you'll be considering. The DTE area redevelopment and a housing structure. And I have no doubt that given time, another developer will come along and they will have an appropriate residential business use for this land. The only motivator for this company, beyond doing something romantically interesting for the community, is financial. I have no doubt what they're paying for using these buildings is significantly less than what they could give and have in the downtown dining, entertainment, music area that we already have. That's where they should go. And I intend to fight it. Thank you.
Anyone else want to make comments? 3 minutes. Mr. Detter?
My name is Ray Detter. I chair the Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council. I also am the coordinator of the Downtown Historic Study and Touring sort of group. We've been involved in lots of things over the course of time, and what we've done is we created a multi-million-dollar sort of project in the downtown. It occurred yesterday, as a matter of fact. We took 260 students from community high school on various tours of Ann Arbor's history with regard to its importance in terms of who it is that we are. And South University, I lived in the Amber for 30 years. And during the course of that time, I was related to a lot of the stuff that was there. All the people who were there, Fred Cry and the village apothecary and all that sort of thing. Their role really in creating the art fair, directly from the South University people themselves. They clean their own streets. They put up the locations where you could have public art actually for that yearly thing that we do and bring in all these people into the city of Ann Arbor. But I just want to say with regard to the nature of that is one of the things in terms of art, we need to identify our project as being both an artistic one and an educational one. And then what we've done is we've created on South University in those 3 blocks a situation in which we put in 6 elements of exhibits, 2 glass frames and 4 wall images, which are made of porcelain enamel in there. Currently, they're moved to various locations, some of them, and they will be placed back, we hope, and where we're going to work to have them placed back, perhaps in different locations in that area, so that people can have a real sense with regard to what South University was over the course of time. Because those of us who lived in South University, or those of us who lived in the areas on the other side of Washtenaw County and walked down South University to get to the university itself, the kind of real sense that they had that this was a part of the nature of their identity is something that we would refer to as both artistic and educational. And I expect that I'll be speaking again, perhaps not to this group, but in other groups, either whether it's the Planning Commission, the City Council, on the nature of this issue. And we support certainly other art in the area of the downtown, but we paid for all the art. We raised the money for all the art that's there. And we hope that we can cooperate with the developers in really getting it back to an area where what we can do is conduct our tours once again down South University and show people what it used to be and have that as a part of its identity in relationship to what's going there today. We're not opposed to the nature of the development, but we want to see ourselves get as much as we possibly can out of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. More comments? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.